The princess's suspicion. The war had been burning across the stars for many years. Whole planets were caught in flames. Millions had died, and still the fighting did not end. The Galactic Council called it the Last War. For the humans, it was a war of survival. For the alien kingdoms, it was a war of pride and power. Princess Lyara of the Elvari Empire sat in her high palace, far above the city of crystal spires. She was the daughter of the emperor, heir to the throne, and symbol of her people's strength. Yet tonight, she did not feel strong. Tonight, she felt a strange fear deep inside her chest. News had spread across the galaxy about a new human commander. His victories were shocking the council. He fought with bold moves no alien general could predict. Armies that should have crushed him were falling back in defeat. His name was whispered everywhere, the war hero of Earth. Lyara listened to his speech on the palace broadcast. His voice was deep, steady, and full of fire. We will not bow. We will not break. Humanity stands together. The princess's hands tightened around the golden rail. She did not understand why her heart was racing. His voice, it was not just strong, it was familiar. She had heard that voice before many years ago, in a time when she was not yet a princess of war, but a child who dreamed of peace. Lyara closed her eyes, and memories came rushing back. A small neutral colony world filled with children of many races. Her father had allowed her to visit in secret, to learn what life was like beyond the palace. She had met a boy there, a human boy. His name was Ethan. He had laughed freely, played games with her, and told her stories about the oceans of Earth. She had never forgotten his smile, but when war broke out, she lost him. The colony was evacuated. She never saw him again. Now, many years later, this human commander's voice carried the same tone, the same hidden spark. Could it be him? No, it was impossible. A child she once knew could not become the most feared warrior in the galaxy. Yet her heart whispered the truth, her mind rejected. She leaned forward as the broadcast ended, her silver eyes wide with confusion. It cannot be, she whispered to herself. It cannot be him. That night, Lyara could not sleep. She walked through the silent palace corridors, her long gown trailing over the crystal floor. The moonlight of her world cast shadows that seemed to follow her, as if the truth itself was chasing her. Her personal guard, Captain Sarek, noticed her unrest. Princess, the council expects you tomorrow. You must rest. But Lyara shook her head. Captain, this human commander, I must know his name. I must know who he truly is. Sarek frowned. He is the enemy, Highness. Nothing more. Do not let curiosity weaken your resolve. Yet she could not let go. Something inside her refused to rest. Later, in her private chamber, she searched through secret intelligence files. Every image of the war hero showed a strong man with sharp eyes, scars across his face, and the weight of battle on his shoulders. But behind that steel, Lyara saw something else, something she remembered from long ago. She touched the image on the glowing screen. Her voice trembled. Ethan, is it you? The room felt colder. The silence pressed against her ears. If this human was truly her childhood friend, then the galaxy had played a cruel trick. She was a princess of the Elvari, sworn to fight humanity. He was the war hero of Earth, sworn to destroy her empire. And yet, once long ago, they had laughed. Together, they had promised to meet again. Lyara turned away from the screen, her heart beating like a drum. She knew she had to find the truth. But the truth was dangerous. If the council learned of her suspicion, they would call her a traitor. If the humans learned, they would call her a spy. Still, she could not stop herself. The suspicion grew stronger with every passing moment. Far away, in the human fleet, Commander Ethan stood on the bridge of his warship, looking out at the endless stars. He did not know that somewhere, in the heart of the enemy's empire, a princess still remembered his name, and soon their paths would cross again. Asterisk echoes of the past Princess Lyara sat alone in her chamber, unable to rest. The galaxy outside her window glowed with the light of distant stars, but inside her heart only shadows grew. The voice of the human war hero still echoed in her mind. It should have been just another enemy broadcast, another threat from humanity. But no, his tone, his words, the way his voice carried fire and warmth, it tore open a memory she had long buried. She closed her eyes again, letting the past rise up. Years ago, before the war swallowed everything, Lyara had been a child with no crown, no duty, and no heavy titles. She had been a curious girl who wanted to see more than palace walls. Her father, the emperor, had sent her to a neutral colony world under disguise, believing she would learn humility among common people. That was where she met him. A boy, human, with messy dark hair and bright eyes that carried a spark of mischief. His name was Ethan. He was not noble, not powerful, not royal, but he was fearless. Lyara remembered how he climbed broken walls and laughed when she was too cautious to follow. She remembered how he stole fruit from the marketplace and offered it to her with a grin, saying, "Don't tell the guards." At first, she had been shocked. She had been raised with rules and honor, but Ethan had shown her freedom. To laugh, freedom to play, freedom to be just a child. One night, while sitting by the quiet lake on that colony, Ethan had told her about Earth. He described blue oceans so wide that you could not see the other side. He spoke of forests where the air smelled like life itself. And he told her about the stars humans dreamed to touch, the same stars that now burned with war. Lyra's lips trembled as she whispered to herself in the present, "You promised you would show me the oceans one day." Her memory continued. The last day she saw him, the alarms had screamed across the colony. Warships darkened the sky. People were rushed into transports. She remembered clutching Ethan's hand, terrified they would be separated. "I'll find you again," Ethan had said. His voice had been steady, even while fear shook the world around them. "No matter what happens, I'll find you." But she had been dragged away by her guards, forced into safety, while Ethan disappeared into the crowd. She never saw him again. Until now, if her suspicion was right. The princess opened her eyes, tears shining like silver. She pressed her hand against the screen, showing the human commander's image. His hair was shorter now, his eyes harder, and scars lined his face. But deep inside those eyes, she thought she saw the same boy who once promised her the oceans. But how could she believe this? The galaxy was full of voices and faces. Her heart wanted it to be Ethan, but her mind warned her it could be a dangerous illusion. And yet, something inside whispered it was the truth. The next morning, Lyara walked into the council chamber. The alien lords and generals sat in high seats, their faces grim. They spoke of strategies, losses, and the growing threat of the human war hero. One general slammed his clawed hand against the table. "This commander of Earth must be destroyed before he breaks our fleets apart. He has already won too many battles. He is dangerous." Lyara sat silently, her thoughts far away. She wondered if the council knew his name. She needed to hear it to confirm the truth. Finally, one of the advisors spoke. "The human is called Commander Ethan Kale. He has united their fleets under his command." Lyara froze. Ethan. The name hit her heart like a blade. She lowered her head quickly so no one would see her expression. Inside, her chest burned with both fear and hope. It was true. The war hero shaking the galaxy was the same boy who once promised to find her. That night, Liara returned to her private chamber, trembling. She could no longer deny it. Ethan had kept his promise. He had found her again, though not in the way either of them imagined. But now the question was darker. If he remembered her, what would he think? Would he see her as the girl he once cared for, or as the enemy princess standing against him in war? The palace walls suddenly felt like a prison. Every shadow seemed to whisper danger. If the council learned she had a personal connection to the enemy commander, they would call her a traitor. Still, her heart refused to let go. She whispered to the stars, "Ethan, do you still remember me?" Far away, in the dark bridge of his warship, Commander Ethan stared at the hologram of the Elvari princess, displayed by his intelligence officers. He had not spoken her name in years, but when he saw her face on the report, something stirred in his chest. He dismissed the officers quickly and stood alone in the silence. "Liara," he whispered. The past was no longer buried. It was alive again. And soon it would change the fate of the galaxy. Asterisk. The battlefield meeting the war did not slow down. Battles raged across star systems, and fleets burned in the void. Yet somewhere in the middle of this endless fire, a strange chance appeared: call for temporary truce. The humans wanted to exchange prisoners. The Elvari Council agreed, but only at a hidden neutral station on the edge of a dead star system. Princess Liara did not usually attend such meetings. They were for generals and diplomats, not for heirs of empires. But this time, she insisted. She told the council she wanted to observe the enemy up close, to learn how this human commander thought. The council agreed, believing her presence would show strength. None of them knew her true reason. None of them knew her heart carried a dangerous secret. The neutral station was silent, floating above a ruined planet. Its walls were cracked, its halls empty, but it was enough to host the exchange. Liara walked through the dim corridors with her guards behind her. Her steps were steady, but inside, her chest was a storm. She knew who she was about to face. On the other side of the chamber doors stood the human war hero Ethan. When the doors opened, two groups entered. Humans on one side, Elvari on the other. Soldiers carried their weapons, but kept them lowered. The air was heavy with distrust. At the front of the human group walked Commander Ethan Cale. His black uniform was marked with silver stars, his eyes sharp as blades. Scars lined his face, proof of battles survived. His presence carried weight, like gravity itself. The moment Liara saw him, her breath caught. The boy from her memories was gone. In his place stood a man forged by war. Yet behind the steel, she still saw him, the spark, the fire, the unbroken spirit. For a moment, the chamber, the soldiers, the war itself, all of it disappeared. There was only him. Ethan's eyes swept across the Elvari, cold and calculating. Then they stopped on her. His gaze hardened for an instant, then flickered. Something in his expression broke, like a shadow touched by light. He knew her. The exchange began. Prisoners were moved across the chamber, one by one. Generals spoke formal words, but Liara barely heard any of it. Her focus stayed on Ethan. Finally, when the formalities ended, Ethan stepped forward. His voice was calm, but edged with steel. "Princess Liara of the Elvari," he said. "It seems our war brings us face to face." The sound of his voice shook her heart. It was the same voice she remembered by the lake, promising her the oceans of Earth. She steadied herself and answered, "Commander, Ethan Cale of Earth, the galaxy speaks of your victories." Their words were formal, careful, but their eyes spoke a different language: recognition, memory, suspicion, longing. When the others began checking the prisoner documents, Liara took a bold step closer. Her guard stiffened, but she lifted her hand slightly to stop them. Her voice lowered. "Tell me, do you remember a small colony, A lake under silver skies? Ethan's face froze. For a second, the steel mask of the commander cracked. His eyes softened, and his lips moved with a name only she would know. Liara, he whispered. The sound of her name from his lips after so many years hit her like lightning. Her heart pounded. He remembered. He truly remembered. But just as quickly, the mask returned. He straightened his shoulders, his voice turning cold again. That time is gone. The galaxy is different now. Liara wanted to argue, wanted to say the past still lived inside them. But too many ears listened. Too many eyes watched Dot. As the meeting ended, Ethan turned to leave with his soldiers. But before he stepped through the doors, he looked back at her once more. His gaze lingered just long enough to carry a silent message. Yes, I remember. Yes, it was real. Lyra's chest tightened. She had the answer she searched for. Ethan Cale, the human war hero, was her childhood friend. But that truth brought no peace. Instead, it brought a storm. Dot, for now she knew. The galaxy had placed them on opposite sides. She was heir to the Elvari throne, bound to destroy humanity. He was the sword of Earth, sworn to protect his people. And yet their bond was alive again. That night, aboard his warship, Ethan stood alone on the observation deck. His officers did not know why his hands trembled slightly. He stared at the endless stars, but in his mind he saw her face. She remembers, he murmured to himself. After all this time, she remembers. He clenched his fists. He was the war hero of Earth. She was the princess of their greatest enemy. Their reunion was not a gift. It was a curse. And he knew the galaxy would not forgive either of them if the truth ever came out. Asterisk the hidden truth. The truce ended quickly. Both sides pulled back to their fleets, and the war resumed like a storm, waiting only a moment to breathe. But for Princess Liara, everything had changed. She had seen him. She had spoken to him. Ethan was real her childhood friend. Now the human commander feared across the galaxy. And worse, he remembered her. Her heart wanted to celebrate. But her mind was filled with fear. If the council discovered their connection, they would call her a traitor and strip her of everything. If Ethan's people discovered it, they would brand him weak and unfit to lead. The galaxy left them no room for friendship. That night, Liara slipped into the palace archives, a place where only royals could walk freely. She searched through secret records of the war, looking for anything that mentioned Ethan Cale. She found files about his victories, his tactics, his daring raids. But then she found something else, something hidden deeper. A report said Ethan had once been captured. Years ago, during the first year of war, a human boy was taken by Elvari raiders and placed in a labor camp. He had escaped months later, leading other captives to freedom. That boy was Ethan Cale. Lyra's hands shook as she read. So this was how he had been forged. Her childhood friend, once full of laughter and dreams, had been hardened in chains and fire. She whispered into the quiet archive, "Ethan, what did they do to you?" Meanwhile, aboard his flagship, Ethan sat in his private quarters. He dismissed his officers early, locking the door behind him. He needed silence. He needed space to think. For years, he had buried her name. Liara, the girl by the silver lake, the one who had shown him kindness when the galaxy gave him none. He had believed she was gone, lost to him forever. And now she stood across from him, not as a friend, but as a princess of his enemies. He pressed his hands against the table, his mind racing. Part of him wanted to forget, to close the door. But he could not. Not when her voice still echoed in his ears. "She still remembers," he whispered, "after all these years." A secret message arrived 2 days later. Liara had sent it through hidden channels, disguised as routine council reports. Ethan's officers never suspected. The message was short, only a single line. "Meet me at the old ruins on Vena, under the white moon." Ethan stared at the words. His instincts screamed trap. Yet his heart told him it was real. He knew her. Handwriting. He remembered the way she carved her name into wood when they were children. After hours of silence, he sent his reply. "I will come." The ruins of Vena were quiet. Broken stone halls covered in moss, lit only by the pale glow of a white moon. Liara arrived first, cloaked in dark robes. She dismissed her guards at the edge of the ruins, telling them she needed solitude for meditation. None dared question her. Her heart raced as she walked through the crumbling pillars. Every shadow felt alive. Every sound of the wind made her tense. And then she heard footsteps. Ethan stepped out of the darkness, his figure tall and sharp against the moonlight. For a long moment, they only stared at each other, the weight of years pressing down. Finally, Liara whispered, "It is you?" Ethan's voice was quiet but steady. "And you have not changed, Liara, not where it matters." The princesses. Breath caught. For the first time in years, she felt like the girl by the silver lake again. They sat among the ruins, the war forgotten for a fragile moment. Ethan told her about his capture, about how he had led slaves to freedom, about how he became a soldier and then a commander. His eyes burned with anger when he spoke of chains and fire, but softened when he remembered her. "You gave me hope once," Ethan said. "When I thought the galaxy was only cruelty, you showed me kindness. I carried that with me, even in the darkest places." Lyra's chest ached. She wanted to reach for his hand, but fear held her back. "And you kept your promise. You found me again. But now the galaxy has set us against each other." Ethan nodded. "We are enemies because our people chose war. But you and I, we are not enemies. Not truly." For a long time, silence surrounded them. Only the wind moved through the ruins. Liara finally whispered, "If the council learns of this meeting, they will kill me. If your officers learn, they will question your loyalty. Yet still, we are here." Ethan looked at her, his eyes steady. "Because some truths are worth the risk." At that moment, the bond between them became something more than memory. It became a secret flame, hidden but alive, burning brighter against the darkness of war. They knew the galaxy would not forgive them. They knew danger was all around. But they also knew something else. Neither could walk away now. The hidden truth had been spoken, and it would change everything. Asterisk. The choice of loyalty, the days after the meeting at Vena, were heavy with silence. Princess Liara returned to her palace, her face calm before the council, but inside her chest a storm raged. She had spoken with Ethan. She had touched the truth of her past. And now, every council meeting, every word about destroying humanity cut her like a knife. The generals were restless. They brought maps of star systems, pointing at the red line of human victories. Commander Ethan Cale grows stronger every week, one snarled. If we do not crush him soon, the humans will stand equal to us. That must not be allowed. Another added, we should target his flagship. Break the hero, and the humans will lose hope. At those words, Lyra's heart almost stopped. They wanted to kill him. She kept her voice steady, hiding her fear. Perhaps it is wiser to focus on weakening their supply lines. A hero cannot fight without ships to follow him. The council nodded at her logic, but she could feel suspicion in their eyes. They trusted her, but trust was fragile in war. That night, she walked alone in her gardens. Silver flowers swayed in the night air, but their beauty brought no peace. Her guard captain, Sarek, approached. "You hesitate, princess," he said quietly. "You speak of caution when we must act with strength. Why?" Liara forced a calm smile. I seek the path that will save our people. But Sarek's gaze was sharp. Or perhaps you seek to protect the human commander. Her breath caught. For a moment, she almost lost control. But then she raised her chin, her voice like steel. Mind your tongue, Captain. I protect only my empire. Sarek bowed, but the doubt in his eyes remained. Liara knew then her secret was close to being uncovered not far away on the human flagship. Ethan faced the same storm. His officers gathered around a glowing table, maps of alien fleets spread before them. One commander slammed his fist. The Elvari princess is dangerous. Reports say she advises their war council directly. She must be treated as a target, not a diplomat. Another added, if we capture her, we break their will. If we kill her, we cut off their future. Ethan's jaw tightened. His officers saw him as unshuckable, but inside, his blood ran cold. They were speaking of Liara as Liara. He said nothing for a moment, afraid his voice would betray him. Then, he answered with iron control. The princess is a symbol, yes. But symbols do not win wars. Fleets do. Focus on the fleets. The officers nodded reluctantly. But Ethan saw doubt flicker in their eyes. The same doubt Liara had seen in Sarek's. Loyalty was a thin shield when suspicion grew. That night, Ethan stood alone at the observation window, staring at the stars. His second-in-command, Admiral Reyes, entered quietly. You're hiding something, Reyes said. He was blunt, loyal, and sharp enough to see what others missed. Every time her name is spoken, you hesitate. Why? Ethan's hands tightened. Behind his back, he did not look away from the stars. Because I've seen enough blood, Reyes. Killing their princess will not bring peace. It will bring endless war. Reyes studied him for a long moment. Then he sighed. If the others suspect you care for her, they'll question your command. Be careful, Ethan. Heroes fall fastest when their hearts are exposed. Back in the Elvari palace, Liara received a coded message. Her hands shook as she opened it. Ethan's words glowed on the screen. They speak of targeting you. I cannot stop them all. Be careful. If you fall. The message ended there. Cut short, as if he could not write the rest. Liara touched the screen with trembling fingers. She whispered, and if you fall, Ethan, I will not forgive myself. The next day, the council summoned her. Their eyes were cold, their voices heavy with judgment. Princess Liara, the emperor, her father, said, We have seen your caution. Too much caution. You hesitate where others act. Tell us, child, does your loyalty to the empire remain pure? The chamber grew silent. Every gaze pressed down on her. For a heartbeat, she thought of telling them the truth, that the war was wrong, that the humans were not monsters, that their war hero was a boy who once gave her laughter and light. But if she spoke, they would. Not only strip her title, they would execute her as a traitor. So she bowed her head and answered, My loyalty is to the Elvari, always. The emperor studied her face, then nodded slowly. Then prove it. Lead our fleets in the next campaign. Show us that your heart is Elvari. Lyra's blood turned to ice. To lead the fleet meant she would stand directly against Ethan. To obey. Her father meant she might have to kill him. Her choice was no longer distant. It was here, sharp and merciless. That night, alone in her chamber, she cried silently. Her tears stained the golden floor, hidden from all but the stars. She whispered into the emptiness, Ethan, what am I to do? If I choose my people, I lose you. If I choose you, I lose everything else. The stars outside did not answer. They only burned cold and distant, as the weight of her choice pressed. Harder against her heart. Asterisk, the final revelation. The fleet of the Elvari Empire gathered like a storm. Dozens of ships, their silver hulls glowing under the twin suns, waited for one command. Princess Lyara stood at the center of the flagship bridge, the eyes of her crew fixed on her. She wore the ceremonial armor of command, shining with the crest of her house. To them, she was no longer only their princess, she was their war leader. Inside, her heart was breaking. The enemy fleet had already been spotted. Human warships, dark and sharp, lined the void like blades. At their center stood the flagship of Commander Ethan Cale. The two fleets faced each other across the emptiness of space. Silent before the storm, Lyra's Captain Sarek stood at her side. His eyes were cold, watching her carefully. "Princess, the Council ordered this battle. Prove your loyalty now. Destroy the human fleet. Destroy him." The words cut her, but she gave no reaction. Her face remained calm, her voice steady. "Prepare the cannons. Await my signal." The bridge crew obeyed, unaware of the war raging inside her chest. On the other side, aboard the human flagship, Ethan stood tall before his officers. The stars reflected in his eyes, but his gaze was fixed on one ship, the Elvari flagship. Lyra's ship. His second-in-command, Admiral Reyes, spoke sharply. "Commander, this is our chance. If we strike their flagship, we break their morale. The princess must fall." Ethan did not answer at once. His fists tightened behind his back. He could still see Lyra's face in the ruins of Vena, her silver, eyes shining with memory. Finally, he gave his command. "No one fires until I say so. Hold position." The officers looked confused, but none dared argue. The silence between the two fleets stretched like a blade. Any spark could ignite a massacre. Lyra stared at the human flagship through the viewing glass. She imagined Ethan standing there, looking back at her. And in her heart, she knew this was the moment that would decide everything. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. "Show us that your heart is Elvari." Ethan's voice echoed too. "Some truths are worth the risk." The choice was no longer distant. It was here, burning in her hands. Then Sarek leaned close, his voice sharp with suspicion. "Why do you delay, Princess?" "The Council watches. Do not forget, if you fail, I will carry out the order myself." Lyra's chest tightened. She realized something. If she gave the command to attack, Ethan would die. If she stayed silent, Sarek would betray her and fire anyway. She had only one way left: open a channel. Lyra ordered. The crew obeyed. A moment later, the viewing glass lit up with the image of the human flagship. Ethan appeared on the screen, his face calm, but his eyes full of fire. Gasps filled the Elvari bridge. Never before had their princess spoken directly to an enemy commander. Lyra's voice was steady, but her hands trembled at her sides. "Commander Cale, the Council demands this battle, but I will not give that order." Shock rippled across the bridge. Sarek's face twisted in rage. "Princess, you shame the Empire." But she continued, her voice rising. "You call him enemy. But long before this war, he was more. He was a boy who showed me truth, who gave me hope. And today, I choose that truth over endless blood." 4. A heartbeat. Silence held the galaxy. Then Sarek roared, drawing his blade. "Traitor, if you will not fight, I will." But Lyra moved faster. With one motion, she pulled the ceremonial dagger from her belt and turned on him. The blade flashed, and Sarek fell, his weapon clattering to the floor. Gasps filled the bridge. The crew froze, staring at their princess in shock and fear. Lyra stood tall, her silver eyes blazing. No more lies. No more chains of pride. "Today, I fight not against humanity, but for peace." On the human flagship, Ethan's officers erupted in confusion. "She's defying her empire," one shouted. "This is a trick." Another argued. But Ethan only stared at her, his heart burning. She had chosen. Against all odds, she had chosen. Him. He stepped forward, his voice strong as he addressed both fleets. The galaxy tells us we must hate. But here, today, a princess and a human refuse that lie. If there is to be war, let it not be because we stayed silent. Let this be the moment we remember as the chance for something greater. The fleets did not fire. For the first time in years, the void between humans and Alvari held no weapons, only silence. A fragile silence, yes, but also hope. On her bridge, Liara lowered her dagger and looked at Ethan through the screen. Their eyes met across the stars, and in that moment, the galaxy changed. Later, history would argue about what truly happened. That day, some would say the princess betrayed her people. Others would say she saved them from destruction. Some would call Ethan weak for hesitating. Asterisk. Others would call him wise. But for Liara and Ethan, the truth was simple. The war had tried to turn them into enemies. Yet even in the fire, they had found each other again. And perhaps, just perhaps, peace was no longer only a dream. Asterisk.